Hello and welcome to Antinatalism this week. This week we have a string of videos to talk about, but before that, let's just have a look at some of the events about antinatalism that are going to happen. Amanda Suknik, who is the host of the Exploring Antinatalism podcast, made a post saying that she has just recorded an in-person interview for the next episode of this podcast. I don't know who that person is, but I'm definitely excited because this is the first time an in-person interview would be posted on the Antinatalism podcast. Dr. Emil P. Torres, who has done such a comprehensive work on the topic of extinction, specifically on human extinction, is going to give a talk on 13th of February. It is going to be live streamed and I will include the link of that in the description. The topic of the talk is going to be "We are all going to die, understanding the origins and evolution of the idea of human extinction." It is on 13th of February at 1 o'clock Eastern time, which I think will be 6 o'clock in the evening in the UK time and 11:30 at night India time. There's a podcast called The Bell on Earth. It is by two ladies, I think Cassidy Bell and Casey Bell. I guess they're sisters. And they have two episodes on antinatalism. They published this lately, although it was like 15-20 days ago. I noticed it only last week. Both of those episodes are very good. They talk about antinatalism. It is a fairly researched exercise. They talk about different aspects of antinatalism. Before I go ahead, one small thing which might be annoying to you like it was to me. The podcast episodes and podcasts in general is full of vocal fry. And this might be cultural thing or a generational thing, like people in certain generations, younger generations these days, in certain cultures might prefer vocal fry. So if you like vocal fry, that's what I'm trying to do. That's vocal fry. If you like that, then please go ahead and listen to the episode. If you don't like vocal fry, even then go ahead and listen to the episode because the points they make are good and they are worth it. They talk about the difference between child-free and antinatalism. They don't confuse ethical antinatalism with environmental antinatalism, which a lot of podcasts generally do. They also talk about some aspects like eugenics, poor people, rich people, who should have children, who should not have children, whether antinatalism is a personal choice, whether you should be telling other people to not have children, and so on. So overall, very good episode. I liked it. Of course, I don't agree with everything they say, but definitely a good episode. And I think these two episodes of podcast are more relatable to young people. So that's one of the other aspects which is good about it. So definitely podcast worth listening to. A few days ago, I had made a video called "Should Muslims Have Children?" The video was about an argument which John Williams had made, that if you have a chance of going to hell, according to Islam, you do have a chance of going to hell if you do bad things, then you're gambling on those children, and if you really want to protect them from all of these possibilities, you ought not to have children. That was the argument there. I had made a video about that and many people were angry about it. They didn't like the video, mainly people who were Muslim. They didn't like the videos. I got a lot of negative comments on that video. Funnily enough, we now have a video from a Christianity point of view, made probably by somebody, if not Christian, by somebody who loves Christianity, putting on a similar argument to say that Christians should not have children, or at least Christianity is providing a better argument for antinatalism. The video talks about, first of all, what is antinatalism. It explains what hedonism is, utilitarianism is, and then it says that antinatalism does not provide, or secular antinatalism does not provide proper argument for not having children. It makes an assumption that antinatalism is based on a premise that pain outweighs pleasure. Now, this in part is true, in part is not true, so whether the assumption itself is valid or not can be questioned. But what the video is saying is that because secular antinatalism cannot prove that pain outweighs pleasure, secular antinatalism actually doesn't have a strong argument. Alternatively, Christianity provides that justification that why pain is more than, or pain outweighs pleasure. The way to do that, it says, it brings out some religious scriptures, and it says that those religious scriptures always say that there is a chance that more people would go to hell after life than they would go to heaven. And because of that, hell is pain, heaven is pleasure. Because more people are in hell, there is more pain in the universe than there is pleasure, and therefore we should not have children, is the main argument made in this video. It is called Having a Child is Evil, Antinatalism and Christianity. It is by a channel called Theological Dissent, and I thought it was a good argument, a good video from Christianity's point of view. So if you're a theological person or a Christian, then this might interest you. There was an episode called Is It Better to Not Exist on a fairly young channel, The Sewer, by probably a fairly young YouTuber. It was a very good episode. It explained David Benetta's argument, a short, like only 7 or 8 minute video, but still a good effort, I thought I should mention. Lawrence this week posted an episode interviewing Karim Akirma. Karim Akirma is a well-known antinatalist philosopher. He has produced a lot of antinatalist literature, and he is a well-studied, learned scholar in antinatalism. The interview, of course, was the highlight of the week. One news is that this was only part 1. There would also be a part 2 sometime in the future, so looking forward to it. In this episode, they discussed various different aspects of antinatalism. They discussed the relationship of antinatalism and religions like Buddhism and Jainism. Both Buddhism and Jainism are the religions founded in India. They have some aspects of antinatalism, in the sense at least they recognize the state of the world, the suffering of the beings and so on. And Karim said that, yeah, those aspects, there are overlaps, but ultimately they cannot be said as antinatalist religions. They also discussed veganism. Karim is vegan for the last 12 years and has been vegetarian before that. And he said that he regretted not going vegan earlier. And that is usually the case with many vegans, that they go vegan and then realize, oh, I should have done this even earlier. But anyway, good to know. Lawrence also spelled out his thoughts about veganism, how he thought the two are so closely connected, and almost like if you're an antinatalist, you're obliged to be vegan, and if you're vegan, you're obliged to antinatalism. Although he doesn't say that in those words, but that's what I think he implied. They also talked about this scandal, which is also the thumbnail of the video, that Karim Akirma's postdoctoral thesis, which he had submitted in 1997, was rejected on the account of it being anti-human, because it was more aligned with antinatalism, and it was rejected at the time. Old times relatively. Now if such a thesis is submitted, I think it would be more than welcome, but unfortunately in 1997 it was rejected. They talk about that. The topic of economics also was brought up, and this is a topic we don't generally talk as much we should, because the other side, pro-natalists, are always on about it. They always fear the reduction of birth rates, and the reduction of population is going to cause economic collapse along with demographic collapse. One of the reasons is that our society and our economy is founded on capitalist foundations, which is based on the premise that we need more consumption and we need more consumers. So if your consumption or consumers start reducing, you start feeling economic pains. That is the problem there. And because if your populations start decreasing, whether it be because of ethical antinatalism or because of some other reasons, whatever flavor of antinatalism, if they start reducing, your consumers start reducing, and then you start feeling the economic problems. This was talked about, so I thought this was very interesting. We don't talk about that as much. And Karim also explained some alternative economic models which we can propose in the place of this ever-growing capitalist society and economy. So very interesting to hear those thoughts out. Then animals in antinatalism is a perpetual topic of discussion within antinatalists. They talked about it. Of course, both agree that animals should be included within antinatalism, but there was a slight point of contention whether intervention into wild animals from stopping them procreating should be termed within antinatalism. It was not a disagreement in principle about whether we should do it or not, but whether such an action should be termed as antinatalist action, whether that should come under the umbrella of the label of antinatalism. What was the point of contention, I think, and that was Lawrence's reservation more than Karim's. Two more interesting topics to which I want to really respond to. One was the obligations. Lawrence asked, what are the obligations that antinatalists have? In the sense, from those obligations, we can get some hint about what are the boundaries of antinatalism. My take on that question is that as antinatalist, as a sentiocentric antinatalist who would want a world without any sentient beings, we don't have a limit on obligations, especially if you consider Peter Singer's Drowning Child thought experiment, where we have an obligation to try and prevent or reduce suffering as much as we can. Then we have infinite obligations. In principle, in theory, there is no limit. Of course, in practice, you have to draw the boundaries so that you can have some kind of workable activity to do. So, for example, it could always be argued that instead of making these YouTube videos that I'm making, I should rather be doing outreaches about veganism on the streets or outreaches about antinatalism on the street. So I cannot do everything at the same time. So I have to draw some practical boundaries within which I say I'm obliged to do this much. This is my duty and I'm going to focus on that. So I think the boundaries of obligations are only in terms of practice, the practical solutions. In theory, I don't think we can put any boundaries on obligations of antinatalists. The second question which Lawrence had asked Karim was that, is there a better argument? Is there any argument at all which would be on the side of pronatalism? Is there an argument for procreation? Is there an argument for us to have children? And Karim brought up 2 points, 2 arguments which he thought were the best possible arguments from procreation's point of view. One is the paranormal world, that the world which might be there but we don't know about it. So things like afterlife, we assume that people die and that's it, they don't exist anymore, but maybe they do exist. There is an afterlife. Similarly, there is a life before birth, we don't know. So that that position of ignorance sort of leaves a gap for us at least to accept that there might be something we don't know and we are only making assumptions based on what we know, and therefore there can be an argument for procreation. That was one. The second argument which Karim brought up was from extraterrestrials' point of view. So if there are some beings, some living beings in the sense that we understand living beings out there in the space of whatever life forms, and if they feel happy looking at us, that we are here. And he derives this from a reciprocal scenario, that if we today find life outside, in the outside space, we would feel joy about it. We would feel nice that there is somebody else than just us. We are not alone. So similarly, there might be some beings outside in the space. If there are, then they would also reciprocally feel joy that we are here. So our extinction or our disappearing might be a loss for them. That might be one more argument to that. And what I want to do, I want to respond to this in the sense that, one, what sort of loss are we talking for them? Is that only an aesthetic loss? The reason for this is that if we find aliens out in the outer space somewhere today and we feel the joy, I think that is going to be an aesthetic, short-lived joy. Once this becomes routine, let's say we find them, they find us, we start communicating with each other, and the joy gradually diminishes. That's the law of diminishing returns. And inherently, like, the intrinsic structure of that joy really is aesthetic joy. It is not some kind of intrinsic pleasure. So that's one point. So even if we have to go extinct, their loss is aesthetic loss. So compared to that loss, our going extinct is better, because a lot of suffering of billions of years of billions of lives would be saved. That's one. But if we have to bring a good argument from procreation's point of view, I think one argument which we can bring is that we don't have to delve with paranormal activities or aliens or anything. We can simply say that we haven't really figured out how this universe works. And that goes from the minutest possible quantum scale to the largest possible, light years and universal scale. There are theories like there could be multiple universes. There are theories there could be infinite universes. There are theories that this universe itself is one big black hole. There are also theories that at the edge of the universe are two-dimensional actually entities, and we are just three-dimensional holographic projections of that. So there are different theories, even on the quantum scale, 100 different theories are there, from string theory and so on. And then on top of that, we don't have a unified theory which can explain laws at the quantum scale, which we can extrapolate consistently to explain things on a universal, on a large scale. So we don't know a lot of things about how this universe works. And that might be a case that maybe maybe there is some reason for us to keep on having children. We don't know that. That is an appeal to some sort of ignorance, I think. That might be a reasonable argument to say. That's what I thought. But overall, very good interview, densely packed with ideas and philosophical discussions. So I liked it very much and looking forward to seeing the second episode of Karima Kirma. Thank you, Lawrence, for doing this. And of course, thank you to Kareem.